Welcome, folks, to another deep dive into the big questions of faith. Today we're getting into the raw, forbidden debate about Calvinism versus Arminianism. Yeah, the age-old question of who really controls salvation.
I'm pumped for this discussion. So we're talking about whether our eternal destiny is already set or if it's our own free will driving it, right?
Exactly. It's like, consider this. Millions of Christians think they choose to follow Jesus, but what if, your choice never really mattered because, say, your fate was pre-written?
Right. It's pretty wild, isn't it? It almost sounds like we're just playing out a script. But I mean, doesn't that completely undercut the notion of free will?
Yeah, it does. On one side, you've got John Calvin from the 1500s who argued that due to Adam's fall, humanity became so, corrupt that we couldn't even desire God without him first intervening. That's where his idea of predestination comes from. God is picking people for salvation even before they're born.
Yeah. And that sounds kind of scary, doesn't it? Like if God's already chosen, then where does human decision even come in?
Exactly. It's a bit like a puppeteer controlling every move. On the flip side, you have Jacobus Arminius, a Dutch theologian who argued that Calvin's view was too deterministic. He believed God's grace is available for everyone, and that humans actually have the freedom to accept or reject it.
So Calvin is saying God chooses, period. While Arminius is more along the lines of, hey, we've got some say in our eternal fate.
Right on. And what's more, both camps pull out the Bible to support their views. Calvinists often cite passages like Romans 9 with lines like, Jacob I loved, Esau I hated, which sounds, like a pre-selection list.
Yeah. And then Arminians bring in verses like John 3:16, stressing that God's love is for the whole world. It's almost as if, depending on which verse you lean on, you're either a fan of divine favoritism or universal love.
Right. The Bible becomes this battleground. And interestingly, this debate isn't just an academic exercise, it directly influenced people and even nations. Think about the Puritans taking Calvinism to the New World, building strict communities based on the idea of being God's chosen.
Yeah. And on the flip side, Methodists under John Wesley championed Arminian thought, preaching a message that salvation is available to all. It's like your neighborhood church could be totally different depending on which side of the fence you land on.
Precisely. And it got so heated that there was this event called the Synod of Dort between 1618 and 1619. Calvinists met to essentially put an end to Arminianism by laying out what we now call the TULIP doctrine.
TULIP, total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, and perseverance of the saints, right? It's both of these categories and a neat acronym.
Yes, and each of those points packs a wallop. For instance, total depravity suggests we're so rotten spiritually that we can't actively seek God. Meanwhile, irresistible grace hints that once God calls you, resistance is useless.
But here's something I've always wondered. If God's calling is irresistible, doesn't that make human choice completely irrelevant? Isn't that a bit, problematic when it comes to responsibility?
That's a solid critique. If every decision is just playing out a divine script, then the, moral and ethical weight of our actions seems to diminish, and that's precisely why Arminians argue that free will is crucial. It preserves personal responsibility.
Right. So, in essence, Calvinism can make us feel like we're just characters in a predetermined narrative. But Arminianism gives us a starring role with the freedom to write our own lines.
Exactly. And it's not just theology. It even spilled over into cultural shifts. Think about how different societies evolved because some communities emphasized divine election while others celebrated free will.
Yeah, that's a big deal, especially when you consider that entire nations and even political ideologies were influenced. The debate reshaped churches, led to revolutions, and even affected the formation of nations.
For sure. And then there's the tension in our modern age when modern scholars try to reconcile these views. Some say Calvin's determinism was a product of his time, a way to bring order to a chaotic world. Others argue that Arminius's insistence on free will makes love genuine instead of mechanical.
That duality really gets at the heart of what it means to be human, doesn't it? Are we free to choose, or are we just following a preordained path? And if it's the latter, then where does accountability fall?
Exactly. And that persistent question, do you choose God or did God choose you, still gnaws at believers today. It's not just academic, it's part of personal identity and ethics.
Yeah, right. Because if our choices are predetermined, then wouldn't that also mean that even our doubts and, even our turning away from God are part of that plan? That can be really unsettling.
Totally unsettling. And that's where the debate frames issues like free will versus predestination in a very, personal light. On one hand, if God is in control of everything, then we might feel like spectators in our own lives. On the other hand, if our choices matter, then we carry a huge, heavy burden of responsibility.
And that, in turn, affects every aspect of worship, community, and even global policy. I mean, it's not just a question of theology, it's the framework of how people understand their place in the universe.
Absolutely. And let's not forget the radical consequences it had. Split denominations, pendulum shifts in political power, wars that even blurred the lines between church and state.
Yeah, it, literally shaped the history of entire countries. But I have to ask, aren't there risks to both extremes? What if the Calvinist view reduces human dignity, while the Arminian view puts too much onus on human shortcomings?
That's the crux, isn't it? Calvin's view runs the risk of making God seem arbitrary, almost like a cosmic selector, whereas Arminianism, by relying on human choice, could be seen to undermine the need for divine intervention in a fallen world.
Yeah, I see that balance being really tricky. If we lean too hard on predestination, it can feel dehumanizing. But if we emphasize free will too much, then we might end up with the notion that salvation is something we earn, which isn't really in line with most Christian teachings.
Precisely. It's a tightrope walk between maintaining God's sovereignty and affirming human agency. And that's why this debate remains so alive today. Scholars, pastors, even everyday believers wrestle with it constantly.
I love how it forces us to examine not just theology, but our own identities. Are we active decision makers, or just following a script laid out in eternity?
There's a real emotional weight behind it, too. People aren't just debating theory. They're questioning what it means to be loved and chosen by God. It really hits home the difference between a God who actively selects and one who generously offers grace to everyone.
Right. And that personal resonance is why this discussion has fueled both revolutionary and reformative movements for centuries. It's more than just doctrinal differences. It shapes how communities live, interact, and even govern themselves.
Exactly. And maybe that's the ultimate takeaway. Both positions, as logically built and passionately defended, force us to confront the mystery of our divine relationship. They ask us what we believe about our own worth and the essence of God's nature.
So, whether you're leaning toward Calvin's predetermined script or Arminius's open book philosophy, this debate invites us to really think about what it means to be human in the eyes of the divine.
That's right. And it leaves us with a question that might never have a neat answer. Do we choose God, or did God choose us? Each view has profound implications on faith, hope, and the responsibility we carry every day.
I'm definitely left pondering that one. It's like an endless loop of reflection, a theological mirror that keeps asking us, what do you really believe?
Exactly, and that's the beauty and the challenge of this debate. It forces each believer, each thinker, to examine their heart and, their place in this vast, mysterious universe.
Yeah, well said. And whether you're stirred by the idea of divine control or the empowerment of free will, this discussion reminds us that these debates are not just academic. They're the heartbeat of faith and identity.